Today, we're going to be going over the cycling spec ad I created. So we'll be going over the idea, pre-production, production, and post-production. I needed spec work, so that's the main reason I created this. But I also feel like these little passion projects are just fun to make. And on top of that, I feel like they're the best form of practice for me. The idea for this actually came from my girlfriend's mom. So her husband, Jerry, he cycles. He just retired and he had a lot of time on his hands. So he could film during the week, he's patient, and it ended up just being the perfect subject for the spec ad. The idea then sprouted from seeing Jerry's old bikes. I'd seen them over the years and they're cool looking. They have the shifter mechanism on the frame. And I personally think old things just look better in film. Old busted up cars, old houses, old clothes, I don't know. I just think they always look better. And so I kind of knew that I wanted to center the film around one of those old bikes. I think that the most important thing for a project like this, when you have absolutely no crew, is to keep it as simple as possible. So when I saw his bikes, I kind of, there's a newer Bianchi and an older Bianchi. And I thought of the simple and honestly elementary, non-groundbreaking idea of a guy going for a bike ride when he sees his old bike and memories flood back and he decides to take that out for a ride. So just a super simple story on nostalgia. For pre-production, I use Milanote. I feel like everybody uses Milanote now. It's not something special, but if you haven't heard of it, it is a game changer. So let's just hop into Milanote real quick. This is a terrible example of pre-production. This is super lazy, so don't go by this necessarily, but it's what I used. When I start any project, the first thing I do is I put every idea that I have into a document. This is an organized version, but when I first do it, it's just a mess. It's ideas I have for scenes, dialogue, structure, literally anything that I have, I just put it down. Because if I do anything slower, like make a storyboard where I'm taking pictures and drawing it out, I get distracted because I have the attention span of a squirrel. While I'm doing this, I often search for music during this period of time. I use MusicBed most of the time, but I used Artlist for this one because it was branded. I feel like music, once I find music that fits the vibe, I'm able to play the scenes in my head better, or the entire video for that matter. Yeah, sometimes I end up going down a rabbit hole, spend hours doing it, but I feel like it's necessary anyways. Yeah, and then after I find the music, I plug it into Milanote. You could just drop the files in and I listen to that music constantly. After I inevitably get stuck, which will always happen, that is when I start to search for inspiration, just to get out of my rut. So a good example is I stole the short bursts of B-roll from this video, Stray from the Way. As you can see, it's completely different in tone. One sec. Like, I don't know, this guy right here shirtless, smoking a bleezy. But I don't know, I just wanted to see if it would fit, see if it would work. Like these little short road clips. I think there's birds right here, that I stole that as well. So yeah, I don't know. I just thought it would be something fun to try. After I'm done with the concept and the idea, that is when I'll start to go in and try to make a storyboard. I suck at it, but I will go in shot by shot, try to lay it out. I'll put the music in for that certain, sequence. When I'm editing, I don't always go by the storyboard. So as you could see, I left this entire intro out, but I do feel like by creating a storyboard, you do get a better sense of what that final version will look like. I do think I'm still in that phase, unfortunately, where I dread pre-production. It kind of feels like I'm in school and I'm writing an essay or doing homework, and I'd rather just fold paper or stare at a wall. It is what it is, but I do feel like it's one of the most important aspects of anything you do in film. So yeah, don't slack like me. Like I said earlier, if you are doing a production like this alone, it can get overwhelming very quickly. So I stand by that idea that there is beauty in simplicity. For this, I used my outdated, busted up Fujifilm X-T4, super outdated now. It's kind of breaking down as well. I either use that handheld or I put it on a tripod. And then for the rollers, I plopped that bad boy on a gimbal and hung out the back of my girlfriend's mom's minivan while she drove and while my girlfriend shot BTS. When it came to lighting, all I used was my little nano light tube and those round foldable reflectors that you can buy off Amazon. I wish I had a gaffer. I wish I could have spent more time on lighting because it is the most important thing for the image, but I didn't. So I really just had to use natural light, go at the right time of day, and try to mold it to a usable degree. A good example of this, or actually a failure, is when we went to go shoot the bike rollers, there was forest fire smoke. So not only did it look like shit, but it wasn't fun to breathe in either. And I wanted to come back a different day, but I was trying to practice going against my perfectionist mentality and trying to think of that idea of, done is better than nothing. So we stuck with it. And for anybody who watches it, they could just, I don't know, think it's fog. Post-production is my favorite part, hands down, but this one was a little bit tough because my pre-production sucked. Because of that, I ended up doing 2 renditions of the ad. I watched it, was like, the music's not really cutting it. So I sat on it for about a week and then, I eventually ended up redoing it. I feel like when I start an edit, I always end up going way too far with it. So for this one, I really wanted to stick with that theme of simplicity. There's no crazy effects or anything, really. Even sound design, which I normally go really hard on, I try to tone it down a little bit and just kind of focus on the sounds that already exist and emphasizing those. So let's just hop into DaVinci real quick for an example. So this scene is where Jerry sees his bike, his old vintage bike, and there is a rack focus between him and that bike. So let's play it without any sound effects. For me, there's something missing. Maybe I'm wrong, but I ended up adding a very subtle whoosh that just emphasizes the rack focus. So I'll play one more time. I don't know. I feel like it's really subtle, and the whole point of it is just to emphasize the movement that is already there. Another example is this clip where Jerry's pedaling quickly down the road. There was no sound to this clip naturally, just wind going by because I was in a car. So I tried to replicate that by adding an atmospheric sound as the first layer. And then to emphasize his feet pedaling, I added the sound of propeller blades, giant propeller blades going around. I don't know. It is something super subtle, but for me, I feel like it emphasizes the motion that's already happening and it adds a little bit more depth. When it came to color, it was actually pretty simple. Most of the time, it's really difficult because I'm colorblind, which is terrible to have when you're doing color grading. But I ended up using Film Vision 2, which is a power grade by Sir, who's a YouTuber. And it's pretty much just a film emulation power grade. And it's really simple to use. So as you can see, this is the image in log, and this is with the power grade on. You do have a little bit of creative control. It is very stylized, but as you can see, there's this 5-node structure. And when you go in, you convert your footage into Rec. 709 and you adjust the contrast, the white balance, the exposure. Then you have a split tone, which allows you to kind of add a look or creative look to your grade. And then when you go into the lab scan, this is where the film emulation takes place. And so you can affect things like the halation, the grain, the saturation, things like that. So it ended up being easy, and I don't know. I think that the image just comes out looking really nice pretty much right off the bat, just with a tiny bit of tweaking. The only thing I'll say that's a negative to this is that it is very stylized, so you can't use it for everything. This was a fun project. Like always, I wish there were things that I could do differently. As a perfectionist, we're always going to be hypercritical of our work. That's just always going to be the case. But I try my best to just enjoy making it so that I can finish. And it ends up being really good practice. Just making the things that you want to make regardless of the circumstances. So yeah, I don't know if anybody really cares about this stuff, but if you ended up making it to the end, I hope you got something out of it. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.